Welcome to the Singer's Guide to Sheet Music. Now, if you've ever looked at a piece of sheet music similar to this and been completely confused and baffled as to how that is in any way useful to you, then you've come to the right place. What we're going to be doing over this short course of lessons is we're going to begin to decode some of what you see on the page there, so that we can break it down into sizable chunks that are easy for you to understand and easy for you to utilize as a singer. A lot of what you see on a piece of music like this actually isn't relevant to us as singers, because there's a lot of information on there that is deliberately designed for your accompanist, whether that's a piano player or a guitar player. And so firstly, being able to understand what information is there for us and what information is there for them can also make it a little bit easier for you to pick something like this up and understand what, its use for you. Now we're going to start this whole thing right from the beginning. I'm going to presume you know nothing at all. And if you do have some prior knowledge and understanding, maybe you did some music at school, for example, then we will be starting off with what can be deemed as revision. So we will be going over things that maybe you have learnt in your past, bringing it back to the forefront and making it relevant, like I say, to you as a singer. Sheet music seems to be something that if you have come to singing directly as a singer and not from some other medium, so if you're not a musician that has then added singing to your repertoire, if singing has always been your core thing, oftentimes we miss the opportunity to learn to read music, because music is taught generally when you're learning an instrument of some kind. So if you've never learned an instrument other than the voice, you may have missed out on the opportunity to learn what all of this means. So here's your opportunity. Today we are going to focus mainly on rhythm. Rhythm is all about understanding the beat of a piece of music and how the notes fit in and around that beat. So let's get started. Let's talk about notes. When you see these blobs appearing on your page, those are all notes. And you may notice that there are a variety of ways that these can be written. Some are coloured in black, some are empty, some have a tail, some don't. Some tails have a little flick on the end. Some of these notes have a little dot behind them. All of these little variations help us to understand how short or how long the note is. Now, when I teach this to children, I like to assign a word to go with some of these note lengths to help them to understand. And I feel like just because we're grown-ups doesn't mean we don't like things to be kept simple. So I'm going to show you what I do when I teach it to kids, so that it makes it incredibly easy for you to understand the beginnings of this. So let's look at our first note. This note in the UK is known as a crotchet. In America, it's known as a quarter note. Okay? For today, we're going to call this note T, because we're British and we like a cup of tea. We're going to call it T because this note is worth one beat. T. So if I put 4 of these together, it would go T, 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 T. 4 equal notes. Okay, so that's note number 1. This is probably the most common note you will come across in terms of the length. Now, we're not yet talking about what note we're singing in terms of, is this high, is this low? Because right now we don't know that. I haven't given you the information because I've just shown you these notes. I've not shown you whereabouts they're being written. It's where the note is written that tells you whether this is a high note or a low note, etc. Right now, we're just talking about how we decode how long that note is. So, this is your T note. T, 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 T. Okay, great. Okay, so our next note here. This is actually 2 notes that are tied together. When they're not tied together, they look like this. It's the same note. It's just that when there are two next to each other, they always get tied together. These notes are called quavers in the UK, or in America, they're eighth notes. So you may see them referred to one or the other. If you're in the UK like me, you will hear the word quaver, not the crisps, but the notes. Because they often get tied together like this, and you'll have seen this written places. Because they get tied together like this, when I'm teaching this to kids, I always tie them together to start off with to help them understand how much they're worth. So this is going to be coffee, okay? So we've had our tea, now we're going to drink our coffee. Now we're on the hard stuff, okay? So if I put 8 of these notes together, it would read coffee, 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 coffee. I hope you're joining in with this at home. I want you saying it and I want you clapping it along with me. So we now have coffee, 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 coffee. In music, we like to divide our rhythm, we like to divide our notes more often than not into groups of 4 beats. Okay, that is the most common dividing. Music can be divided into groups of 3 notes, or groups of 5 notes, or groups of however many you want. But the most common that you will come across is groups of 4 at a time, okay? Which means that within bar lines, and I will show you what those look like, the beats and the rhythm has to add up to 4. So a little bit of maths for you. So for example, if we take our tea and we take our coffee, we could create any kind of combination of a mixture of those things so long as they add up to 4. So we could do tea, coffee, for example. Or we could do coffee, coffee, tea, tea. You with me? Good. Now, at this point, if I was teaching the kids, I would send them away now to make up their own little rhythms. And if you want to do that as a little side note, challenge yourself, you go ahead and do that. See if you can write yourself a few rhythms that involve tea and coffee but add up to 4. All right, let me show you the next most common note that you might come across. So this one is worth 2 beats. We call it a minim. In America, they call it a half note. Okay, so it's worth 2 beats. So within our bar of 4 beats, how many are we going to fit in? Okay, I'm glad you're good at maths. We can fit 2 of these into our bar of 4 because they're worth 2. 2 lots of 2 is 4. Okay, maths as well as music. Aren't you lucky? Right, so we've got here then, this one. You're going to love this one. I'm going to make you do it because I make the kids do it. I like to call this one milk. The reason I call it milk is because we can make it last longer if we clap it out, milk. So you clap on the first beat and then you milk the cow on the second beat. So we've got milk, milk, and that's your 4 beats full, okay? So again, we can now create any kind of combination of these. So for example, we could do tea, coffee, milk. Adds up to 4, okay? Or we can do milk, tea, coffee. Now if we were to have a steady beat going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, we can have our rhythms. Milk, tea, coffee, milk, tea, coffee, milk, tea, coffee. Right? Now I feel it helps as singers to put words to these because it's incredibly difficult to understand how long they have to be if you just clap, because you can't make a clap last longer than just 1. Right? So when you've got a longer one like our milk, yes, our 2 beat note, then it helps put a word to it because then you can make that word last longer. Okay, let's do our next one. So this one there's no tail. It's just an empty hole. And this one is, we call it a semi-brief. I don't know why we have more complicated names for these things, but we do. Americans call this a whole note. And you may have noticed that the American system of naming these notes actually helps you to understand how they fit within a bar of 4, which is great if the bar is 4. If it's 3, then it gets a bit confusing in my mind. But a whole note is worth all 4 beats of a bar. So you can only fit one of these in a bar of 4 beats. And I like to call this soup, because we're going to take ages slurping our soup. Soup. 4 beats. So you see, we have our steady beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That we count in groups of 4. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our rhythm is made up of longer and shorter notes, right? So, tea, coffee, milk, soup, coffee, 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 tea, milk, milk, for example. But can you see how we're using these different notes to kind of break that rhythm up? And it's just a way of writing down to let you know how long or how short the words need to be when you sing them. Now, I've given you the most popular ones, but there are an awful lot more, and we will go into those in a minute. But for now, I want you to practice with me. Okay, so here comes the challenge. So I have created some rhythms, and I have put particular words underneath each of the notes. Now, when you see the words written underneath the notes like that, they always do their best to write the word directly underneath the note that you should be singing at that point, so you know whether that should be a long held note or a shorter note. It helps you to match the words to the rhythms that you are seeing on the page. So let's start with this one. So the words are, how are you doing today? But how do we speak it in rhythm? Or how do we sing it in rhythm? What I want you to do now is I want you to pause the video, and I want you to look at this rhythm, pick a note, whichever note you want. Oh, there's a note. Oh, there's a note. Whichever one you want to pick, wherever you're comfortable singing. And I want you to try and sing this rhythm, understanding how long each one should be. Now, the tip for doing this is to make sure you are constantly keeping your 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Your constant beat, so that can help you understand how many of those beats each one of these words should be on. Okay, pause the video, give it a go. How did you do? Did you get it? Let's break this down and let's have a look. So, the first word is how, and that's written underneath this note here, the empty one, and so that is worth 2 beats. How, 2 beats. The next word are is written underneath crotchet, which is worth 1 beat. The word you is also written underneath the crotchet, also worth 1 beat. So far we've got how are you? Okay? Then you see there's a bar line. It's because we've already added up to 4. And that's what we're going to stick to for now. We're going to stick to groups of 4. So that's already added up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're in the second bar. So the second bar, we've got 2 quavers tied together. And underneath the words doing. So that's doing. They're worth half a beat each. Doing. 2 is under a crotchet, 1 beat. 2, and then day is worth 2. Day. So all together now we have, how are you doing today? And if I put some kind of melody to that, how are you doing today? today. Right? So this is telling us how long those notes are. We're not yet talking about whether they are high notes or low notes. You can choose wherever you want to sing them for now, okay? For now, we just want to see if we can keep up with that rhythm. Now let's talk about a little bit about tempo. What does tempo mean? Do you know what tempo means? Tempo is the speed. So how quickly do we do this? Now at the moment, I'm not giving you a set tempo. I'm not telling you how quickly or how slowly I want you to sing this. So you can decide for yourself how quickly the beat is going 1, 2, 3, 4, or whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I've not given you any information to determine what that is yet, okay? So for now, we can do this slowly. How are you doing today? Or we can do it fast. How are you doing today? Okay, but it's the same length, same number of beats per note, whether we're singing it quickly or whether we're singing it slowly. You with me? All right, let's try another one. So here we go. We're still just sticking with these 4 very, basic note lengths to begin with. So here's your second one. Do the same thing. Pause the video, have a go at figuring out for yourself, then press play and see how you did. Okay, was that any easier? So now here we've got 4 quaver notes all tied together. And we generally won't tie more than 4 together at a time. They usually get tied together in groups of 2 or groups of 4. So because there are 4 of them, they've tied all 4 of them together here. So those 4 quavers fit with the words I am doing. Okay, so that's going to fit into 2 beats here. I am doing. Yes, 1, 2, but it's I am doing because it's 1 and 2 and. Yes, because they are half beats. The fine is under a crotchet, which is worth 1. Fine. The thank is also under a crotchet, which is 1. Thank. The you is under our semi-breve, which is worth 4. You. Yes? So this whole phrase, we've got, I am doing fine, thank you. Right, now if we sing this, pick any old note you want to, it doesn't really matter for now, but singing wise, we would do it, I am doing fine, thank you. Okay, so this is how it's telling us how long the note is, how we have to hold it. Now this becomes more relevant if you are, for example, singing in a group situation. So if you're in a choir, it's incredibly important that you all finish your notes at exactly the same time. When you're a solo singer, you can be slightly less precise with how you interpret what's written down because there is a certain amount of creative interpretation that needs to take place. So in certain genres more than others, let's take jazz for example, it's very rare to hear a jazz singer actually singing the notes exactly how they are written on the page because they tend to improvise all around the melody and they push and pull the rhythm slightly. However, it's useful to know where your standard is so that you know where you can kind of improvise around from. So it's still useful to have that information to know how long the composer of the piece intended that note to be. Okay, good. Now these are just your basic notes, but let's talk a little bit about how we can add to this, because in a piece of music, it's very rare to find anything that's just written with those very basic notes because it would be relatively dull. And so in order to make things a little bit more interesting, we can vary the note lengths more. So, for example, as soon as you add a dot behind a note, like this, that dot times is that, or multiplies, that would be a better word, wouldn't it? Multiplies the length of that note by 1.5. So if the normal note length is 1 beat, when you add a dot to the back of it, it becomes now worth 1.5 beats. If normally the note is worth 2 beats, so if it's normally minim, when you dot the minim, it's now worth 3 beats because it's worth 1.5 what the normal one would be. Okay? So, bear that in mind because I'm going to now give you another rhythm that has got some dots in it. Now, because we're talking about halves now, so for example, if we've got a crotchet that is dotted crotchet that's worth 1.5 beats, in order to add up to 4, we're going to have some notes in there that are just a half. So this is where you might find your quavers untied to anything. So remember, when it's not tied on to another quaver, it looks like this. It's just got that tail dangling because it's got no one to tie it onto. So let's have a look at some rhythms that have got some dotted notes on them, and let's see if we can decipher how to sing those. Okay, so challenge time. This won't be easy, but I want you to give it a try, see how you get on, and then come back and we'll decode it together. So pause the video and have a little try yourself. Okay, how did you do? This is harder, right? So we're still breaking it down into counts of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But because we're now introducing that half length of note into the mix, it's going to make life a lot easier if instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, we start to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, so that we hear where the half beat sits. So if they were all quavers, for example, it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So if we count it like that, it makes breaking this rhythm down a little bit easier to do. But let's go through it and let's have a look. So our first note here is a dotted crotchet, which is worth 1.5 beats of our 4 beats, right? 1.5 here. 1 and 2. Yes. 1.5. 1 and 2, but not the and. Okay. The next one for the first half of the word balloon, ba. This is on your quaver, which is half a beat. So that now adds up to 2 beats, right? 1 and 2 and on the next word. So my bal, yes. So we've got 1 and 2. The next word starts on the and. My ba. My ba. Did we get that? If you managed that yourself when you were trying, you did very well, because this gets more complicated. So then the next word, the is, oh sorry, the loon even. Forgot the loon part. The loon of the balloon. The loon. Now that's your crotchet, that's your 1 beat note. Yeah, so that's just nice, one nice simple beat there. Ba. Sorry, loon, sorry. And then we've got is, are on 2 joined up quavers. So they're both worth half a beat. So far we've got my balloon is. My balloon is. Yes, and if I clap out the beat to help you with that, we've got my balloon is. Now, just so that, because I can't be counting 1 and 2 and saying the words at the same time, if I clap like this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you can do the same thing at home along with me. So we're clapping on the 1 and we're making a little bit of a sign with our hands on the and, so that it makes it easier to see where the half beat lies. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So here we've got, my balloon is a. Let's try that one more time. Ready? And my balloon is a. Got it? So then we're up to green one. So the word green, here we've got a dotted minim. So that makes it worth 1.5 of a normal minim. So normal minim is worth 2. So this one is now worth 3 beats. Green. 3 whole beats, long one. And then we've just got a 1. Don't ask me why I chose these words. I have no idea. That's just the words that came into my head after I'd written the rhythm. So, so our whole thing now, we've got, my balloon is a green one. So if I was going to sing that, and again, I can make up whatever melody I want to right now, I can use whatever note I want to, it would go, my balloon is a green one. Do you see, as soon as you put melody to it, it doesn't sound quite so weird that the word green is so long, for example. And again, we can change the tempo. So we can make this faster or we can make this slower. I did that relatively slow, so it was easier to kind of hear the parts, but we could speed it up. So instead of being 1 and 2 and, we can have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. My balloon is a green one. 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 Whatever tune you want to make up is fine by me, so long as you've got that rhythm right. Okay? Let's try one more. So we're still looking at these dotted notes. So here's your next one. See if you can break this down yourself. And again, think about clapping the 1 and 2 and, so it makes it easier for you to understand where the half beats lie. Give it a go and then come back and we'll break it down together. Okay, was that a little easier that time? Did we get there a bit faster? I hope so. Let's break it down and let's just make sure that we're all on the same page. So, first things first, we've got 4 quavers all tied together. So remember, you can find these quavers tied up in groups of 2 and 4 are the most common, but you can also see them tied in groups of 3 occasionally. Here we've got 4 of them all tied together, okay? So we've got 1 and 2 and, yes, and that's with the words, is it really? So we've got, is it really? Yes, 1 and 2 and. Is it really? The next word, green, is dotted crotchet, so that's worth 1.5 beats, okay? So it all gets very mathematical. It's just lots of adding up, basically. So this is 1.5 beats on the word green. Green. Then the word or is on a single floating crotchet all by itself. So this one's not got a friend to tie itself to, so it's just got that single dangling tail at the end with nothing to tie it onto. It's got no friend to hold hands with. So that tail is dangling there. That tells us that there's just 1/2 beat there. Okay? 1. Oh, sorry, or is the word there, or. So far we've got, is it really green, or. And then in the next bar, because that's added up to 4 already, we're up to 4, so we have to start a new bar. So in the next bar, we've got, is it under two tied together quavers, is it. So that's 2 half beats tied together, is it. And then red is on a dotted minimum, so that's worth 3 whole beats. Red. So the whole thing together goes, is it really green or is it red? So that's the rhythm we've written out here. And again, if you put some melody to that, it starts to make a bit more sense. So we can sing it, for example, is it really green or is it red? That was very primary school choir, that was. So again, you can make up your own melody to fit this, because we're just looking at rhythms today. So we're just looking at how long the notes are. We will look at melody another time. So this is how we break it down, and you can see that as soon as you put those dotted notes in there and you start to use the half beat, the rhythms become way more interesting. And so I'm telling you these more advanced stuff straight away because you're going to see it straight away. The other thing you're going to see straight away is you're going to see notes that are worth less than half a beat. So when we have one that's worth half a beat, it looks like this. This is your single quaver with its dangling tail because it's got no one to hold hands with. Now if I want it to be worth 1/4 of a beat, so half as much as that, all I do is I add an extra dangling tail, and that halves how much that is worth. So it started off being worth half a beat, I add an extra dangling tail, now it's worth 1/4 of a beat. If I wanted it to go even smaller again, and I wanted 1/8 of a beat, guess what? I add an extra tail. So every time you add an extra tail on, you make it worth half as much again each time. So we go from it being half a beat, to 1/4 of a beat, to 1/8 of a beat. You add another one, you get 1/16 of a beat. Okay? So when you see that on the music, you can understand that, generally speaking, our general rule, if you want to just immediately gather information about whether you should be singing a long note or a short note, your general rule is, if it's not coloured in, it's long. If it is coloured in, it's short. If it's got a tail, it's even shorter. And the more tails it has, the shorter it gets. Watch out for the dots, because they create half again. So that's how you get that kind of push and pull rhythm. And that's all you need to understand in terms of really how long the notes are. So I'm going to set you some homework now. I want you to find a piece of music. It can be any music at all. Preferably one that is written for a singer to sing, so not just a piece of piano music, so not a classical piano thing. So a song with a singers on it. You will find plenty of free pieces of music on the internet. If you search for something that's old enough, you will find it for free. Or there are lots of sites where you can download sheet music for a small fee per song. So if there's a particular song that you sing often, it might be worth investing in getting the sheet music for that, because that's going to become very useful during this process for you to start to decode it. So I want you to find any song that you are vaguely familiar with, and I want you to start decoding the notes, and I want you to have a little look. Now, like I said at the beginning of today's lesson, within a piece of music there is a whole load of information that is not for you, that is for the accompanist. So let's very quickly identify where you need to be looking to find the vocal line. So when you get a piece of music that looks like this, the easiest way to find the notes that you should be singing is to look for where the words are written, because the words will generally be written underneath the notes that you should be singing. And if there are no words written underneath it, that's generally a good indication that it's not you that needs to be interested in those notes. Those notes are probably for somebody else, the pianist or the guitarist or whoever. So for example, in this piece of music here, you're looking for those words at the top, so you can see that the melody line is at the top and the words are written underneath it. And then there's a whole load of notes written underneath that with no words, and that's because that's all the piano part. And then the next words are jumped right the way further down. So on one page, A4 page of music, you might find that there's only 2 or 3 lines of actual text, but there's a lot of extra notes in between. Those are for the pianist. So you don't need to worry about those ones. The notes you need to worry about are the ones written at the top. Now, for now, I don't want you to worry either about whether the notes are moving upwards or downwards, whatever. I just want you to start looking for the lengths of notes that we have discussed today. And if you choose a song that you're already familiar with, it's going to make it even easier because you already have an idea of what the rhythms of those phrases are going to be. But I want you to have a look and see if you can break it down and identify how long, how short each word should be. And just give yourself a bit of time to practice that and digest it. In the next lesson, we will start looking at other things that influence the rhythm. So for example, rests, which we haven't gone into today, but we will go into next time. Within a piece of music, there will be moments where you don't sing at all. And so there is a way for the composer to write down how long they want you to shut up for, basically. So there's a length of time that you know you have to be quiet. So we're going to talk through those a little bit next time. But for now, your homework is to practice your tea, coffee, milk, soup. And look out for all of those dotted notes and those extra tails that make them shorter and shorter each time. And see if you can start to decipher a piece of music that you're familiar with already. I'll see you next lesson.